Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about food Americana. Let's be honest, when you think about food Americana, you basically be thinking about the good food that America has. And luckily for me, I have a special guest named David who has all of the great intelligence of food Americana. David, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I've been a journalist for some 50 years. I was in network news forever. Then I switched and created a show called Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, which some of you may remember.
Yeah.
After that, I spent 11 seasons with that show, moved on. Most recently, I wrote a book called Food Americana about the fact that A, we have an American cuisine, and B, I explored exactly how we got it and what it is. And basically, we took bits and pieces of the cuisines of other countries and cultures, generally as brought here by immigrants, although we also adopted the foodways of Native Americans. And we modified these dishes and we changed these dishes and we made them Americanized, but they're now part of a core cuisine that includes the American versions of Chinese food, Mexican food, Italian food, pizza most specifically, and on and on. And it was a lovely dining experience to come up with the information.
No, I think that would be interesting to have gone through. Would you say, because I lived in the East Coast and here in the Midwest, and I've also lived in the South, and I feel that just in those three regions, their cooking styles are very different. You know, the way that they cook food, even in the South, different even parts of the South, once you
Mm-hmm.
cross that Mississippi line, the East Coast, the east of that and the west of that are two different styles of cooking as well when it comes to the South. So I just feel that, regions most definitely has an impact on the style that changes something so simple like rice and beans or chicken or just cornbread alone is something so
Mm-hmm.
different in so many different regions.
Cornbread, with or without sugar.
With or without sugar, with or without corn. That's a big
Yeah.
debate for some people.
No, region. Look, all cooking at its heart is regional. We talk in this country about Italian food. That's absurd. There's the food of Abruzzese, there's the food of Calabria, there's the food of Venice. It's all regional based on what's available. In the United States, obviously, we cooking styles differed regionally based to a great extent on what was available and what was available to whom, and especially what was available to people in poverty. Because most of the truly creative dishes in any region are the ones that were invented or modified by people of limited means trying in a very creative way to create acceptable sustenance. You look at soul food, and so much of it is based on the bits and pieces of the animal that, pardon me, in the days of slavery, were what the overseers, I hate to use this word, but the owners of the slaves made it possible for the enslaved people to eat. And it wasn't the good parts of the animal. I mean, we spend a fortune on chicken wings now on Super Bowl Sunday, but that wasn't considered the prize part of the bird.
Yeah, it really wasn't. You would think of the breast to be the most prized part of a bird versus the wings or the legs that barely have a lot of
Well, so yeah, someplace with meat on it, like a thigh, which tastes much better than a breast because it has fat, and
Oh,
fat
yeah.
is flavor. And we went through. Look, I've battled my weight my whole life, so I'm intimately familiar with this. But when I was young, and suddenly the skinless chicken breast became available,
Mhm.
an item which had seemingly no calories, but also seemingly no taste.
Yeah.
Most of the great recipes involving chicken, especially European recipes, involve dark meat, which has a much deeper flavor profile because it has some fat. I mean, an interesting thing happened to me personally. I'm old enough and unfortunately not thin. I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and had to change the way I'm eating. And my nutritionist said to me, we're not going to count calories. This is the stuff that you should eat. This is the stuff that as a diabetic you should not eat. We're going to make a schedule for when you eat and just eat good food. And in doing that, for the first time, not counting calories, I've been losing a substantial amount of weight. It's fascinating how we, as a culture, kind of put the kibosh on good basic food and in many cases replace that with processed crap and Snackwell's cookies that supposedly were fat free. Well, of course they were fat free. They were full of sugar, which turned to fat. Um, just eat good food. Make good food. It's that simple.
Do you think that's the reason why America has such a high drive-throughs and drive-ins and things like that, just because a
Well,
lot of
which
the
came
fast food's
first?
processed?
The chicken or the egg? I mean, the drive through, the fast food culture was part of the boom boom 50s after
Yeah.
World War II, where white America, this did not apply to Black America, where white America was suddenly feeling flush and wonderful. And you had the GI Bill to let white people go to college. Um, and Eisenhower started building an interstate highway system. And people started moving to the suburbs and being in their cars, which they could now afford, hours a day. And the natural outgrowth of that was drive-through restaurants. And look, we pride ourselves these days on being a go-go culture. So obviously, one hand on the wheel, one hand on the burger is a sign of getting things done, as opposed to France, where they get just as much done and take a good 1 hour lunch most days. Um, but this fast food drive-through thing was seen as America on the cutting edge of the future. And B, the combination of salt, sugar, and fat that fuels these dishes is medically or not, at least emotionally addictive. So we've come to expect those flavors wrapped in wax paper.
Yeah, that's true. But I feel that back then the food was more fresh, I guess you could say, just because what was accessible to them. And I
Well, it
feel that now,
depends when back then is. I mean, on the one hand, if you were eating what was grown close to you, yeah, it was fresher for the most part. But so-called technological advances over time modify, there's all this talk today about genetically modified. Well, they've been growing strains of produce for decades that have been grown for a certain attribute. For example, tomatoes are grown to be round so that they can be transported in those containers. They have not been genetically engineered to taste good. I live in New Jersey. There is a brief period of the summer when we get Jersey tomatoes. They're the ugliest, most misshapen tomatoes on earth. They're also the best, unquestionably. It's
it's
what
interesting.
happened is we stopped needing to eat seasonally as our fascination with science and mechanized food production, made it possible to have strawberries all year, even though they're really only good at a certain time of the year, made it possible to have all sorts of seasonal foods available all the time. But the result is, A, we've come to expect it, and B, the flavor profiles of those foods have been substantially watered down. Now, it's hard. My wife and I tried one winter. We said, we're going to eat seasonally. We're just going to do what people used to do in the winter, which meant canning tomatoes when they were in season, and then in the winter eating root vegetables. Based on what has happened to our desires about food, I found it impossible. But I tried.
Yeah, you tried. So it became impossible just because you already felt the luxury of having whatever you wanted it in the
Yeah, I
season.
wasn't. There's only so many days you can eat a parsnip.
And soups and soups and
Yeah, a
soups.
lot of soup.
Oh, I could only imagine. Yeah, I'm not a soup person. I'm never
Neither
been a
am I.
soup
My
person.
wife is a soup person. I look at that stuff you can drink, and I think that ain't a meal.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
It can be a
what is
nice
this?
addition. I mean, gazpacho is a great starter in the summer, but wait, there's one exception. Really, really good clam chowder where it doesn't taste like minestrone soup if it's red. It doesn't taste like milk if it's white, where it tastes of clams. That's a good soup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but always having something on the side, like a bread, some crackers, or some croutons.
No, those
That
little oyster
you know what I mean? I need
crackers.
to have, yeah, or oyster crackers. Thank you. I need a crunch with my soup. Like I love those like clam chowder and broccoli and cheddar and chicken and rice. Like, oh, those are so great, but I need something else. I need some crunch
Need a
to
little
it.
crunch on the side.
Yeah, I need that
Well,
crunch on.
that's why croutons are so great on French onion soup.
I know what? I have not tried French onion soup because when I was a
What?
CNA, I always had to serve it to my patients and it always had a weird smell. Like it smelled bland, like it smelled like just onions, but when I tasted it, it didn't taste like anything. So I was just like, yeah, I'm okay. So yeah, I
Well,
never
you were
tried French
serving them.
onion soup.
You were serving the medical industry soup.
That's true, where
Go
it's
to a
supposed to be
good
bland.
brasserie or any French restaurant and ask for French onion soup. You'll get a better experience.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Next time I'm gonna order the French onion soup if I feel the environment is good. So I guess leading up to that, how do you necessarily know when you're entering into a good restaurant or just a place where that they serve food? How do you know if the food's gonna be good? By the smell
Well,
or by how it
uh,
looks?
on the one hand, it depends where you live. If you live in a food intensive environment, such as New York, New Orleans, San Francisco, Paris, Rome, you stand a much better chance walking into a restaurant and being surprised by a lovely experience than, pardon me, um, you would necessarily get in Indianapolis.
Correct.
Um, Pardon me, my allergies just hit
Oh,
me.
oh, you are perfectly fine. I had allergies just a couple months ago, and man,
Ooh,
they were
that was
deadly.
bad.
Yeah,
Um,
allergies
other
have been deadly. Sorry.
other than that, it's so hard to tell. I mean, I'm not a big devotee of things like Yelp because in an angry America, that is often an opportunity to hurt a restaurant owner as opposed to share real expressions. Um, when we were looking to book places for diners, one of the places we always started was local magazines, the city magazine, the state magazine, the newspaper, and read what their food writers are saying. And that'll give you an idea. If I'm going to a new city, I will immediately pull up the food columns that have been written there over the last couple of months to get an idea of what at least some professionals think about various items. Number two, I got to tell you, this is going to sound so basic and so stupid, but you get an awful lot of good food recommendations from Uber and taxi drivers because I'm much more interested in the places people really eat than
Hmm.
in shishi places I'm told to eat. We went to Charleston not that long ago and had an absolutely incredible meal at Husk, which is a very well known restaurant, considered one of the best in the country. It was a fantastic meal. But so was the one at the Oyster Shack that a local directed me to that was kind of at the end of a bridge to nowhere. And the food was extraordinary. I really, really trust knowledgeable locals to tell me where to eat.
Yeah, I think that is a great key point because sometimes the locals they know those gems or they know the people who started those small come up ones. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes those little small places are a lot better than those like fast food stores that are there. That is very, very true. I guess because when when people from outside of America, when they've always asked me since I'm American, do we just eat steak and potatoes all the time? And it's like American food is more than steak and potatoes because it's like you said earlier, we've Americanized almost every culture at this point. And I guess
Mhm.
leading to my question is which food outside of America has become very popular in your eyes?
Food
Does that
from
make
elsewhere?
Yeah,
Well,
food
yeah,
from outside. Yeah, what would
I
be?
now believe sushi is an American food.
Oh, okay.
It is
Yes.
it is produced in this country in a way that is unique. Most of what people here prefer among sushi is nothing you'd see in Japan. Uh,
Oh,
and that's
really?
fine. The big sushi rolls are generally not what is eaten in Japan. Sushi rolls with spicy mayonnaise are definitely not what's eaten in Japan. But that's fine. We have developed an American sushi style of our own. I mean, Oklahoma, in my book, I profiled a gas station sushi bar where they make legit sushi of any type, but the most popular in this gas station across from an air base in Oklahoma, the most popular is deep fried sushi rolls. They make an entire roll and then they toss it in the deep fryer. And
Okay.
this is the state that lives on chicken fried steak. So, what could be better than chicken fried sushi? Sushi's an American dish now. Chinese food modified to our tastes is American. Pizza is American. Um, Lobster, one of the few dishes that's indigenous. Um, but again, we took it from another culture. We took it from the Native Americans who taught the English settlers you can eat these things, otherwise you're going to starve, and taught them how to cook shellfish in a manner that is reminiscent of the clam bakes you can still enjoy in New England today. I mean, you throw the lobster in with some seaweed on top of some coals, and you got dinner. Back then, the settlers were horrified by the concept of eating this thing, but the initial settlers were not particularly good at raising food since they were basically upper middle class who had escaped England for a variety of reasons. Middle class, not necessarily upper middle class, but they weren't real into doing the hard work
Yeah.
of raising food, and they nearly starved.
Yeah, I seen that in a documentary before. The World History Channel has so many great documentaries on back then when the settlers came in, and that was one thing that they actually had the natives show them how to cook and how to farm and how to build houses. And I was like, wow, it's amazing. It's amazing what we don't we don't really know in school until we get out of school and we
Well,
have to
and
self-educate.
considering the genocide that followed,
Yeah, it's baffling.
it's
It's
not a
baffling. I
happy
help you
story.
and then I kill you guys off.
Yeah,
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But I guess to start wrapping up the show before time runs up on us, what can be some lasting words that you can possibly leave our guest with?
eat good food, make good food. The preponderance of things like food kits, where you get this box with pre-proportioned stuff, it takes longer than it takes to make real food. Um, take a chicken, put it in a pan, salt, pepper, garlic, and a little bit of chicken stock around the base to keep it moist. Put it into a 500-degree oven. Take it out. You'll have dinner. It's that simple. And I wish, again, I mentioned earlier, um, just eating what's good as opposed to counting calories. That would be my mantra these days. Now, that doesn't mean it's got to be organic, naturally certified to come from Mars or whatever. There's an awful lot of jargon that gets used around supposedly healthy food. Um, get as close to the source as you can, and cook simply but well.
Oh, wow, that's nice. Simple words. You simply put it. I think that is easy said than done. I think people make cooking seem harder than what it has to. They overcomplicate it because in
Mm-hmm.
reality, it's as simple as what you said. Sometimes you don't need 500 ingredients to make it taste good. Sometimes adding all those 500 ingredients makes it taste salty and nasty and just like, ugh, you ruined the food.
There you go. I mean, I am a late in life convert to the reverse sear. You familiar with that?
I have no
Okay.
idea.
Here's
Please
here's the reverse
explain.
sear. Most people cook steak by searing it
Uh-huh.
on the outside and then leaving it in that pan to continue cooking, which means that the seared area gets bigger and bigger, and the evenly cooked area that is at the temperature you want it to be is smaller and smaller. The reverse sear, you take a piece of meat, you cook it initially at a low temperature. I use 275. When it reaches 130 or 135, you take it out, you quickly throw it in the hottest pan you can get to sear both sides. But what you now end up with when you look at it is almost none of that gray brown layer around the outside. Because you cooked it at a low temperature, it is evenly cooked
Oh,
across the entire piece of meat. It's pink from side to side. Um, it's
that's
impossible to
interesting.
screw up. You can't
No,
screw it up. Trust
I
me
think
on
that's
this.
I think that's really smart because for me, once I'm done frying chicken, I just put it in the oven on a low temperature just so it stays warm and it stays, and sometimes even makes it even more crispier when it's in the oven while I'm still frying the other chicken. And it's like it's kind of the concept, but not really. But you basically still cooking it a little bit, but slow and low. And then when you put it on, it makes it just right. Oh, that's smart. I like it. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for being on my show. I love your perspective. I think I appreciate you sharing it with myself along with my audience. That's it. That's my show, you guys, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys want to know more, go check out mitzythinking.com and you find more great contacts as well as David here as well. So always keep thinking. Bye.